Saturday, which is usually most people's competition day. And so what do you do on competition day? Do you just roll in and no warm up, get on the table and ready, go? That's it? Like a lot of people do?
A lot of people do that.
Yeah, even some of the most elite pullers in the world, Michael Todd, does not warm up before his matches, which is insane to me. Yeah. You have to warm up before you get on the table, before you do anything explosive. So what we're going to talk about now is how do you warm up on competition day.
And what is kind of the concept behind the warming up? Just understanding how your muscles work and how the body works a little bit. When you fill your muscles with blood, the veins dilate, so they open up a little bit because they're now transferring a whole bunch of blood in and out of the muscles. But the muscles also, the muscles are surrounded by fascia. Well, as the muscles swell with blood, the fascia stretches, and that's why you get that pumped feeling that you get when you get pumped up, when your forearm gets so tight that you can't flex your wrist anymore. It's because there's so much blood in the muscles and the fascia is so expanded and stretched out that the muscles can't contract any further. Once that blood relaxes, that fascia is now stretched out. The veins are now dilated and warmed up. The next time you want to get blood into that muscle, it's A, not going to get nearly as much of a pump, and B, it's going to get there a lot faster and a lot more readily available. And on top of that, as we know, connective tissue, very hard to get blood to. And if you start after you've let your connective tissue now rest and it's perfect and ready to go, everything's ready to fire at 100%, but you don't give it any blood beforehand and you just get in there and fire on it. I mean, I understand like some people don't get injured, and like Alex said, guys like all the way up to Michael Todd do it this way. I'm sure he gets his blood flowing on some level. Like he's got to have some way where he gets some sort of like blood in his body flowing, but it's still, if it's not an actual warm up, I don't know. I would think that performance would definitely improve with a warm up, and the main thing is just avoiding injury.
Every athlete in every sport warms up, so I can't see that being any different for arm wrestling. I think.
And just in our experience, it always feels better when we warm up. And if we don't warm up properly, that sucks. And that might be why people don't like warming up, is they don't do it properly. They're not actually warmed up. They're still like recovering from their warm up, and then they're not ready to pull. Like I've made this point before, and if you, again, like Alex said, every sport has like everybody warms up in every sport. Some of the best athletes in certain sports, their warm-ups are so hard, they make, like Jerry Rice, for example, his warm-ups used to make people puke, and that was just what he did to get ready for the game, like to make sure that when he goes to really push himself in the game, he's already like been close enough to it that his body's ready for it. And like Alex said, it all depends on your level. As your level increases, the level you're trying to reach is higher. I think, again, the necessity for warming up is probably even more important. So how do you do it?
So my warm-up is basically my rehab session, my recovery session to start. So that's off the table. That's a lot of shoulder work, just getting blood in my shoulders. So I do a lot of side lateral, rear delt work, and external rotation, and also get blood to my triceps. I may do a couple bicep sets, but when I get on the table, that's when I'm going to get blood into my biceps and all the arm wrestling muscles.
And the only other thing I'd add to that is my wrist like extensors. So usually when I do my external rotation or when I do my triceps, I try to also engage my wrist, either like the chopping or the external rotation, just because those again are the recovery angles that we try to hit. So just getting blood to those areas. That's all I'd add to that.
So after that rehab session, which is maybe like 2 rounds, so like two total sets of each exercise,
and probably just with like either very lightweight or bands, and a good amount of reps. But you want to have enough resistance that you're not like working the tendons and the ligaments. You're getting blood into the muscles. So you want some resistance, but again, you don't want to be like straining yet.
Right. You're in that 30 to 40 rep range, basically. And then I get on the table, and that's where I do, the traditional warm-up that most people see, where, I start warming up my wrists, kind of loose to start, and then start adding some tension, and then, maybe some cupping and pronating, back and forth, and then side to side. So I'm working my bicep, my hook, getting some blood into my elbow and my shoulder.
And again, moderate intensity. We're not going hard here. We're not trying to push into each other like in a strong, like intense way or anything. But we do want to build up some blood, so there is some resistance. 30 to 40% resistance.
Yeah, and then a little bit of back pressure. high posting, and maybe drop my riser a little bit, get some blood flow there.
Let me work my elbow a bit. Again, you're just trying to get steady blood flow and steady tension, and you want to stay in this like 30 to 40% range, moving through these simple angles until you get a good pump going.
Yeah.
And then I would do this part twice as well, right?
Yeah, I would do that too.
So I would switch arms. I mean, well, it depends on the competition, because you don't want to warm your arms up too close to each other if you're pulling really far apart.
Yeah.
So take a second, minute, shake it out, come back on the table. Maybe now we don't have to do our wrists again. So now when we come back on the table, we just get into a hook and kind of like really try to wake up our biceps, or we're really trying to wake up our back, or a little bit more on the elbow, you know. But again, light intensity on any of the connective tissue, and just trying to get a good pump in your muscles. If for some reason you have a hard time going lightly on the table, and as soon as you get in here you're going to end up in a practice match before your tournament, don't do that. Warm your wrists up a bit, and then, like we did before, get the band and start to hold some good pressure where you're getting to like maybe 80% to get a pump going. Because again, you want to really get blood into the muscles. Like a pump that almost feels uncomfortable, like, oh shit, I wouldn't want to pull right now, the pump is too much. And you do that at least 15 to 20 minutes before you do have to pull.
Yeah.
That way the blood will dissipate, it'll exit the muscles and everything, but the veins are still dilated and the fascia is still stretched out, and the next pump you get when you get on the table will be totally manageable, and you'll feel much more awake when you get to the table.
Yeah, exactly. You'll get a bit more confidence as well, because now you've got on the table, hopefully you feel strong, you felt the position where you need to go, so then when you get back on the table for the actual competition, you're a little bit more prepared, and you're not going in completely cold.
For sure. Okay, and this kind of brings us to the last part of this video, which is going to be the deload part of the video. So again, we talked about the wave a little earlier, the idea that it's ideally we would like to go light, medium, heavy, reset, light, medium, heavy, and when you do that, the reset can kind of become your deload, or after a few months of progression, you might actually take like a full week of actually deloading, like in just traditional powerlifting. But now, relating it to arm wrestling, how does it work for arm wrestling when you want to stay practiced on the table? You need to let your joints heal up, and with all the auto-regulation, it's hard to know what it is needs rest, or when you're going to be able to get the rest. So we've kind of got two protocols, right?
Right.
And the way you're going to decide to deload is just, again, auto-regulation based on how fatigued you're feeling. Because the concept behind it, I guess we should explain the wave, right? The idea of how you can't constantly progress.
Yeah, you can't constantly progress week to week indefinitely. Your body will need time to recover, especially if you're natural. You cannot just keep progressing, adding weight, adding volume every week and expect your body to catch up or keep up with that.
And regardless of anything, your body also, it won't keep improving on the same thing. That's where the whole conjugate method, which we're not going to get into, comes from, but it's where the waves work out too. So basically, like, you can progress for about 3 to 5 weeks depending on your genetics and your everything about you individually, but at some point in that 3 to 5 weeks you're going to start to plateau and eventually start to digress. So the idea of a deload is to kind of catch your body before that happens, because if you actually get into the point where you're still training hard but your progress is going down, you're getting so fatigued at that point that the amount of rest you need to take is going to hinder your progress so much.
Right, so if we do this right, we should be able to reset at the perfect time where we can then continue to wave up and down. That we can do
and create sort of a linear progression
Yes.
out of the peaks of those waves.
Yeah.
That's the idea behind deloading and waving. So now again, with arm wrestling, depending on how you're pulling, and for example, with this last almost 2 years of COVID, probably gonna get banned for that, of craziness, a lot of people haven't had a tournament or a match or something to actually peak for. And like Alex said, you can't just progress and progress and progress and progress. So you need to have worked some deloads into that whole thing. And when you're going to do that is when you feel, when you're starting to feel too beat up, right?
Yeah, so you can, and everybody obviously wants to pull every week. It's hard to miss a pulling session. So if you are going to keep pulling every single week, then your deload will be midweek, will be in between sessions, where you cannot really continue doing your gym sessions the way you're going to do them. You're going to have to drop it and just do recovery work a couple times during that week and mostly rest, because your arm wrestling sessions will carry on fatigue through the week and then obviously to the end of the week.
Yeah, so basically the idea behind this concept is you just pulled and you're going against somebody who you normally are able to handle, able to like, be even with, and they were beating you up. Like you might have had one good pull with them that session, but then you were just getting opened up. You didn't have anywhere to go. You were feeling like just not as strong as you should be on the table, but you were working really hard. Like you were giving it everything you had, but you just weren't able to output what you normally can output. If prior to this, you've been just progressing and making good progress and feeling stronger, assume you're at a point where you need a deload. So like Alex said, this week now of lifting, you're not going to go back to this program that we've designed where you hit your biceps and shoulders and triceps and then your chest and back and all that. You're literally just going to do recovery days. You're going to do your normal recovery day and then rest, and then recovery day and then rest, and then maybe recovery day, rest again, or just rest.
Yeah.
And then your pulling session, you're also going to reduce your intensity. You're going to do kind of that 2 weeks out pulling session from our peak where you're low intensity, but relative like some moderate volume and working your lanes and like feeling the practice of arm wrestling, working on the things that you normally do, but very low intensity. And then the following week, you can start your lifting wave again, where you're basically like week 1 of our peak, where you're at your 80%, 8 to 10 reps, 8 RPE, and start progressing from there. The next pulling session you can go hard, and by that next pulling session you should feel like a new puller again. You should be like, wow, like stronger, like the guys that you were comfortable with, like you could kind of hang with before, you're now like able to really give a fight to, or you're able to dominate them, because you'll actually make a big amount of progress in that deload if you do it properly.
Yeah.
And now the second version would be if you're going to actually take time off the table.
All right, so why are we giving you 2 different options to deload? So that first one was if it's not our tendons or ligaments that are sore, but it's our big muscles that are sore. So it's biceps, back, wrist flexors, shoulders, lats, chest, all the muscles that we use in arm wrestling, those are the ones that are sore. So that's why we're gonna take time off the gym, just do recovery work so we can be ready for the next table session.
Yeah, and the idea as well, though, you do have to take one table session where you do drop that intensity, because even if you take that week off of the gym and just do recovery, if you're going to feel better when you get to the table session that we're telling you to go light on in that last protocol. If you go hard on that table session, it's going to kind of ruin the deload, and you're not going to be able to, like, you're just going to be as beat up.
Yeah.
So you do get to pull with the first protocol, but you have to make sure to keep that intensity down.
Yeah, so in the second deload, we're not going to pull because it is our tendons and ligaments that are sore. So we do need to take a week off pulling to give them more time to recover.
Yeah, and this is when like you feel like your riser or your inside elbow or maybe right here in your wrist. Those are the 3 of the main spots that usually really bother people, the elbow especially. When those things are feeling super tender, that's when you want to apply this protocol where you skip a week of pulling, but you can still kind of, you can't push your gym lifts, but you're going to still be able to lift your normal routine. So the normal chest and back, biceps and shoulders that we prescribe in our program up to this point, you can still do that, but we're going to do kind of that like first week of the wave or of the peak where we're at like 80%, 8 RPE, like 8 to 10 reps. So we're getting a workout, but we're not pushing like hard by any means. And then what you're going to do is you're actually going to do this 2 weeks in a row. So we just did our hard pulling session. We realized we need a deload. We're fucked up. We're going to do week 1. We're going to skip pulling on the weekend, and then we're going to do week 1 again and start progressing from there.
Yeah.
And when we get to that pulling session now, 2 weeks from the one that was where we felt beat up, it should be a very similar feeling to the other deload where you feel great again. You feel like you've actually made progress and are at a new starting point, better than you were before you ended the last one.
So super important to include deloads regularly in your program. Probably in every 6 to 12 weeks, you'll need to include one of these deloads.
Depending on how you're pulling.
Yeah, of course, and depending on your level and how hard you're going. But if it's something that you feel like you need to do every 2 to 3 weeks, then something's wrong. You're definitely pushing yourself either too hard on the table or too hard in the gym, and you should probably take a little bit extra time off and reevaluate your training.
If you're noticing that like you're feeling this drop in performance every couple weeks, and then you're like, oh, I got to take 2 weeks off. You take 2 weeks off, you feel good for 2 weeks, you push stupid hard, and then you feel beat up again. You're probably pushing too hard somewhere. Start to evaluate where you can either reduce intensity or reduce volume to give yourself more time to recover and a more recoverable workout. That's a big thing, right? Like, just I guess last point, not that this video isn't already too fucking long, but it's much better to get in, say, just to use simple numbers, like it's much better to get 100 pounds of work in 5 days in a row than 400 pounds of work in one day and only be able to do it that one day, and then have to wait all the way till next week before I can do that 400 pound workout again. I'm going to make more progress doing 100 pounds 5 days in a row than doing 400 pounds once.
Consistency over a long period of time is the best way to go for
Marathon,
long-term progress.
not a sprint.
Yeah. So that concludes the Table Monkey Strength Program. All be in a playlist, so you can go back and watch all the videos from start to finish.
And yeah, I think it's pretty conclusive. Obviously, ask questions anywhere along the way. Shoot us videos of your lifts or your performances, like we said through the whole thing. Let us know what else you want to see. Contact us if you want actual private, like specified programming for you, in which we would try to like help you figure out the auto regulation part. We do want to get into that. So if this intrigues you and you really like what we're saying and you want more specified training, contact us about that. Leave feedback in the comments.
Smash that like button.
Subscribe, hit the bell,
Share.
all those things.
And monkeys out.
Peace.